I don't want to assume that you know what ashwagandha is, but I also know it's, we hear that word and we're like, oh yeah, I know what that is. That's been around forever. That's an ancient healing herb that does, I don't know what it does. It's really good for you. Okay, so we're going to talk today about what it actually is and what the properties it has and why Kiran Krishnan, microbiologist, is talking about it when he could be talking about anything. First time ever doing this presentation and sharing it with you. So we are hot off the press. And my name is Shivan Sarna. I founded Chronic Condition Rescue, and I've created 12 online summits. I have a women's health rescue summit coming out in the spring. I'm extremely excited about. Consider yourself invited, sir, to be a speaker.
Thank you.
And also, the Shivan Show podcast launches March 2026. Finally,
Amazing.
I'm able to say it. So it will be health, wealth, and wisdom. We're going to cover all the things to help you live that better life. But it's not going to be typical and it's not going to be boring. I promise you that. Okay. Now, what I want to say is that Kiran could literally retire today. He doesn't need to be doing this. But he's very passionate about healing the planet. He travels, to his point, more than anyone I know. Maybe JJ Virgin and you travel about the same amount per year for conferences. He's educating the educators, practitioners, and doctors. And so everyone's coming to him with stuff. Hey, what do you think about this? Can you do this? What do you think about this? He co-founded Microbiome Labs. And after this incredible success of helping the world's microbiome and continuing to educate, he's still continuing to educate on that topic, but he left it in great hands and there's still love, tons of love there, but he wanted to do some other things. And so he's come on, we've talked about joint health together. We've talked about his gut health course. And today we are talking about a new way to understand a new development in actives, which you're going to understand what that means in a second, in ashwagandha. Take it away, Kiran. Let's go. Thank you.
Yeah, well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shivan. So one of the passions after exiting from Microbiome Labs was to elevate the world of herbs. These ancient herbs are amazing. Plants are amazing healing compounds, but they're also super complex. And there's a lot of stuff in plants that we don't even know about. And so the idea was to bring some real good modern science to some well-known ancient herbs. In particular, to discover what else can we know about these herbs, right? So ashwagandha is a perfect example. It's been around forever, used in Ayurvedic medicine. There's lots of ashwagandha in lots of different products around the world. And it's very well known as an adaptogen, in specifically as something that alters mood, right? So it improves, it reduces anxiety, it improves mood, so it brings about some balance to mood. That's where all the studies are. But we were curious and we said, well, there must be something more to it, right? Because there's empirical evidence in Ayurvedic medicine of it doing other things. So this was one of the targets. There's a few herbs that we've targeted and developed, but this one was another one where we poured a lot of resources into it with a lot of analytical chemists and all that. We took apart the root of the plant, and you only want the root. You don't want any stems or leaves because there can be toxigenic compounds in the stems and leaves. So you only want the root. We took about the root and said, what else can we find in here? And then you'll see as a result what we found and what the effects are. So let me start by sharing my screen. And let's see. And when I go into this full slideshow, just let me know that everything looks all right.
It's not full screen yet, but I think you're about to press that button. There you go. Looks good.
Okay. So one of the key things we discovered is around the concept of aging, right? So everyone knows anti-aging, healthy aging, inflamma-aging, and all are very big topics right now, and for good reason. We'll talk about what that good reason is. And there are some mechanisms that have been discovered over the last decade or so around cellular function and cellular health that indicate that there are clocks within our cells that can accelerate aging. And if they are dysfunctional or they're not expressed enough, they do accelerate the aging process starting at the cellular level. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'll tie in why we're talking about that with regards to ashwagandha. That is a well-known adaptogen for mood, right? We're bringing this product to the market under the brand Regenerive, which is what you see here. But keep in mind, we're going to be talking a lot about aging here. Now, the human lifespan over the last 200 years has dramatically increased. Even in the early 1900s, right, which is not that long ago, people were mostly living to their 40s, and which means that people did not go into perimenopause. They did not go into menopause, right? They did not go into andropause. They did not know what happens to the human body with large-scale data when you were in your 60s and 70s. There were some people who were genetic anomalies that lived older to an older age, and they tended to have just normal health, but they did all the unhealthy things, right? Think of the George Burnses of the world, smoking cigars and drinking whiskey all the way till 99 years old. There are always those genetic anomalies, but the general average person did not have a chance to live into their 70s and 80s. So it was hard to understand what actually happens to the body at that point as you're starting to get older. But, since the mid 1900s and more to recently, our life expectancy has reached the 70s to 80s. Most averages in Western developed countries are in the 80s plus. A lot of that was due to improved hygiene. A lot of people end up getting sick earlier on because of issues like dysentery and contaminated water and all that. But so all our improved hygiene and all that helps. Vaccinations have helped as well with conditions like polio and other things that used to take a lot of lives, and even just measles and mumps. All those things used to take a lot of lives. Antibiotics, of course, played a very important role in helping to increase the lifespan of people. And then, just trauma medicine and so on, right? So we all know that if you got run over by a horse and buggy back in the day and you had some internal trauma, the likelihood was you're going to bleed out and die. Nowadays, if you get in a car accident, you have internal trauma, there's a very good chance they'll save you because of all the advances in medicine. So all of this, the infectious disease control, better nutrition, understanding nutrition better, safer childbirth, so improving childbirth rates and so on. All of that stuff has led to a longer lifespan for people. And then the modern contributors as a result of the lifespan extension are the advent of cardiovascular disease and chronic diseases that occur, but then some of those are being managed a little bit better. So people are starting to live a little bit longer. They're not necessarily living healthier. There's a difference between health span and lifespan, but they're certainly living longer, right? But their health span may be a different thing. And in fact, anti-aging is playing this significant role in health span. Right? That's really what we care about. We don't care about a number. We don't care about if you live to 101 or 102. The question is, for how long are you functional? Right? Do you have a high quality of life? Are you mobile? Those types of things are the most important. It doesn't matter if you live to 100, but the last 15 years of your life, you're on 15 medications and can't walk and can't move, right? So health span is a new aspect of lifespan. And this is where anti-aging medicine comes from. And it becomes really important to understand what happens to the body once you go past 40, 50, and beyond. And what is really become clear is that aging and what we understand about aging, which is the loss of function, right? Where walking becomes hard, bending down becomes hard, right? Eating foods becomes hard. All of these things start to become hard. Seeing becomes hard. Thinking becomes hard. Remembering becomes hard, right? All of these basic things that we take for granted become hard. All of those changes is actually a disease process. Right? It's not natural. It's not a natural degradation of functionality that needs to or should happen. It is a disease process the fact that it does happen, right? And so then what are the cellular mechanisms behind this disease process that is causing degeneration? That billions of dollars of research has gone into this over the last 15 to 20 years, and a number of really interesting discoveries have been made. So all of it goes down to what is happening with the cells, right? Because if you think about your joints falling apart, your heart becoming hypertrophic and not pumping as much, your brain not functioning properly, your eyes, right, the rods and cones and the cornea is not functioning the way they used to, your muscles are not functioning the way you used to. All of those are made up of cells. And what's clear is the changes that start the aging process start in the cells. And then when they accumulate in the cells, in enough of the cells that make up the tissue, then that tissue starts to suffer as well, whether it's your muscle tissue, your skin tissue, your eyes, anything, right? So a lot of the discovery and all that around aging has focused in on what is happening at the cellular level and what are those markers that we can not only understand, but then follow and measure and try to improve on. Right? So when you look at the modern definition of aging, it falls largely under these cellular mechanisms. So number one is cellular homeostasis loss, right? So what does that mean? Well, homeostasis means that the cells have a really healthy balance of translation of DNA into RNA, and then the transcription of DNA to RNA, and then the translation of RNA to protein. Right? So that has to happen cleanly, and it has to happen sequentially, that you can't have this accumulation of DNA, dysfunctional DNA that's not being able to be coded. You can't have an accumulation of RNA. You can't have errors happening in the coding of DNA to RNA. You can't have errors in the translation of RNA to protein, where the protein becomes misfolded. All of those things, when they start to occur at higher frequency, leads to metabolic damage over time, not only in the tissue, but in the cells itself. You also see an epigenetic drift, which is a loss of youthful gene expression. These are patterns that occur when you're younger, right? Where you can activate things properly, right? You can activate energy synthesis. Your brain can activate glucose receptors to bring glucose to the brain so that you have plenty of energy and your brain can focus easily. And in fact, it's overfiring in most kids, right? But you don't get so sleepy and tired and forgetful and all of that. Those are all called epigenetic drifts that occur because your gene expression has slowed down, right? So keep in mind that anytime you need to do something, you want to move, you want to work on something and so on, your body has to respond to that by expressing genes that will then make proteins, and those proteins go to work functioning for you, right? If you get, and that's what epigenetics is gene expression. So if there's a dysfunction in gene expression, it means your body cannot respond to the needs that you're asking of it. Right? It used to do it when you were younger. You could quickly express genes, make proteins, and proteins go to work for you. But as you get older, you get dysfunction in the expression of genes. And a lot of it is through changes in methylation. Methylation is a process, a chemical step process in which certain genes can get activated at certain regions, and then certain proteins can get activated properly, and so on. That methylation step becomes dysfunctional. Another hallmark of aging includes mitochondrial dysfunction. This, many aging biologists or people who research aging will say that the mitochondrial dysfunction are probably the most important thing, right? And the reason for that is because the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It's making the energy currency that the cell needs in order to conduct its function. And if it cannot make the energy that the cell needs to conduct its function, no matter what the cell does and what you put in, the cell cannot do what it's supposed to do because it doesn't have the energy to do it. So these powerhouses of the cell, as they become dysfunctional and they're not producing enough energy, the cells cannot function, right? So just think about an old engine, right, versus a newer engine. The newer engine, you put in a gallon of gas, you're going to burn that gallon of gas. It's going to translate to a certain amount of horsepower, and you're going to move the vehicle, right? But as that engine gets really old and becomes inefficient, and maybe some of the cylinders are broken, and maybe the fuel injection valve is partially clogged, and the engine's not working as well, that same gallon of gas is not going to get the same amount of horsepower out of the engine. Right. So you're not going to get the same amount of fuel and the same amount of power out of the input, the energy input. Right. So we might be eating carbs, we might be eating proteins, we might be eating fats, we may be taking in the substrates we need to make energy. But because we have a dysfunctional mitochondria, we end up not producing adequate amounts of energy from those sources. This is actually called the mitochondrial free radical theory of aging, where the idea is that as the mitochondria age and they produce energy, they produce free radicals, right? It's like the exhaust of the mitochondria. And if you can't quench those free radicals fast enough, the free radicals actually start to damage the mitochondria, right? And then the damaged mitochondria don't produce enough ATP, and eventually you get the cell suffering as a result of that. Now, that can also drive cells into something called senescence. Senescence are where cells become zombie cells. They don't die, they don't turn over, they don't become new cells, they just sit there, right? And as they sit there, they can go into a number of risks. They can become immortal cells, which we know of as cancers and tumors and so on, or they can just sit there and produce something without any regulation, which we all have seen in age spots. Right? When you look at dark spots that occur, which we call age spots for a reason, hyperpigmentation, if you will, those are your melanocytes. These are the cells that make the pigment, melanin in your body, becoming senescent. And they're basically confused and stuck, and they're just sitting there producing melanin regardless of any sort of stimulation from the sun or anything else. That is a senescent cell that's starting to become like a zombie cell. Right. So what is supposed to happen is those cells are supposed to die after some amount of time. New melanocytes are supposed to come in who are tightly regulated by stimulus. So you're not supposed to, you don't get age spots when you're younger because those regulations are very, very stringent and very clear, but you do get them as you're older because you're increasing the risk for senescence. You also get this loss of proteostasis. The loss of proteostasis is basically the regulation of protein folding in the cells. So remember, the cells are translating DNA to RNA. RNA is being translated to proteins. Then once the proteins are synthesized, they have to fold. All the proteins that function in your system are folded into these very intricate shapes, and those shapes dictate the function of the protein. So misfolding of the protein becomes a huge issue because now these proteins are being made, but they're useless because their shapes are misfolded, so they don't function the way they're supposed to. In fact, in neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's or even Parkinson's, you see the misfolding of the protein as the first step. Right. There's the tau proteins that are misfolded in Alzheimer's, or they're called alpha-synuclein in Parkinson's. These are the misfolded proteins that you can measure and see accumulating in these cells as a hallmark of aging that's leading to neurodegeneration. Then there's a David Sinclair model where aging is equal to information loss in the epigenome. The epigenome is the information loss in the DNA. So all of the genetic material within the cell and within the body. And the reason why you would get information loss is because there's a loss in the ability to translate the DNA appropriately, right? DNA has to be stable. The telomeres at the end of the DNA stabilizes it. The histones, all of these components within DNA stabilize the double helix and keeps it functional. When you lose some of those stability components, the DNA becomes unstable and you lose the information from that DNA because you can't translate it. Right. So some of that is reinforced here in the 13 hallmarks of aging. There's basically genomic and epigenetic integrity that's lost, which means the DNA, the information is lost because of genomic or DNA instability. The DNA actually starts to fall apart because of telomere attrition. That's a shortening of telomeres, these long kind of non-coding ends in your DNA, which maintain stability of the genome. And then epigenetic alterations, which is the expression of the genes, also gets altered, which I talked about before, as changes in how well we express the genes we need to express. So that's one category of the 13 hallmarks. The second category is cellular maintenance and repair. We talk about loss of proteostasis, which is the misfolding of protein. We no longer can fold protein correctly so that they have the right functionality. The disabling of macroautophagy, that is the cells that are damaged need to be killed off and removed so you can get new cells in place so that they don't become senescent zombie cells, right? That mechanism starts to shut down. And then stem cell exhaustion, which is the stem cells are always supposed to be there ready to replace the dysfunctional cells. But if your stem cells numbers are low and you can't convert the stem cells, or the official term of that is differentiate the stem cells into the target cells, then the stem cells cannot feed the generation of new cells. Then when you look at the metabolic and mitochondrial side, you get a deregulated nutrient sensing. So the receptors that sense nutrients and all that are starting to get disassembled because they're all protein based. Mitochondrial dysfunction, we talked about the powerhouses of cell becoming choked up and damaged and they can't produce enough ATP. Lipid metabolism disorders, where your body cannot activate something called beta oxidation, because that is a very energy intensive regulated process to break down fats for fuel. That becomes harder as you age as well. And then there's the category of systemic communication issues. So altered intracellular communications, right? So what are the things that are allowing the parts of the cells to talk to one another? Those are getting dysfunctional, especially because of the increase of reactive oxygen species. Everyone's heard of oxidative processes, and this is why antioxidants can be really important. So all of those oxidative byproducts can corrupt some of the cellular communication. All of this can lead to chronic inflammation and dysbiosis even in the gut microbiome, right? So keep in mind, these are the hallmarks of aging. This is exactly what is happening in your cells, in your body, that leads to dysfunction of the cells, thereby dysfunction of the tissue that the cells make up, and then dysfunction of the entire organ systems that the tissue makes up, right? And everything starts to degenerate down the road. Now, these hallmarks of aging are absolutely connected to disease, right? So there's a number of these kind of charts that have been published. This was published in 2023 in a very high-level journal called the Chemical Neuroscience Journal. But as you can see, like you can connect, let me go back. You can connect things like mitochondrial dysfunction, loss of proteostasis, lipid metabolism disorders to all of these known chronic conditions like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, liver fibrosis, neurodegeneration. They're all directly affected by these cellular functional changes, right? That's why these hallmarks are considered the hallmarks of aging, because as they progress and they increase in your body, it leads to all of these known disease or phenotypic dysfunctions within the body, right? Now, as the aging biologists or the age longevity kind of researchers were looking at what are the mechanisms that are in place to protect from these types of dysfunctions occurring in the body, they discovered something called sirtuins. Many of you may have heard of sirtuins, but they're basically enzymes or proteins that exist within the cells. And when you have adequate levels of sirtuin expression, they protect the cells from all of those dysfunctions we just talked about, right? All of the 13 hallmarks of aging are protected against by sirtuin activation and something else called NRF2, right? And I'll talk about NRF2 next, but let me address the sirtuins first. Now, there are 7 sirtuins that have been found, right? They're abbreviated SIRT1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And they play a different role in the cell. So, for example, SIRT1 plays a very important role in the nucleus and the cytosol. The nucleus is where the DNA is, right? And the cytosol is the medium around the nucleus. Now, why do they play a role there? Where it plays a very important role in mitochondrial biogenesis, in stress resistance, so it protects the cell against stress, and it controls inflammation as well to protect the DNA in the nucleus, right? The reason the DNA is in the nucleus of the cell, which means that when you look at the cell, you've got the cell membrane, then you've got all these organelles, you've got the cytoplasm and all that. And then inside there, you've got another membrane, which is a nucleus, and the DNA is in there. So the DNA is in a double wall structure, if you will, because it's really important to protect the DNA to make sure that the cell can function the way it does. And SIRT1 plays a very important role in protecting our DNA so we don't see a degradation in DNA and a loss of information. Right? So SIRT1 is very critically important. SIRT2 exists mostly in the cytosol. It's the cytoskeleton regulator, which means it regulates the structure of the cell itself. It also regulates the cell cycle. Every cell in your body goes through an important cell cycle on a daily basis. And it also protects the cell against oxidative stress response, right? SIRT3 functions in the mitochondria. It's a major mitochondrial deacetylase, which means it protects the mitochondria against reactive oxygen species and that exhaust that I talked about, right? So remember, when the mitochondria is producing energy, it has an exhaust, and those exhaust comes out in the form of superoxides or reactive oxygen species. We have a couple of enzymes called SOD and catalase, so superoxide dismutase and catalase. Those enzymes break down the reactive oxygen species so they cannot harm the mitochondria. SIRT3 plays a very important role in activating these enzymes. So if you don't get proper expression of SIRT3, your mitochondria undergoes a lot of stress and intoxication by the exhaust it produces. SIRT4 also works in the mitochondria. It regulates insulin secretion, amino acid and fatty acid metabolism, right? Because the mitochondria needs glucose, it needs amino acids, and it needs other components in order to function and produce energy. That is all regulated and helped by SIRT4. SIRT5 also functions in the mitochondria. It does something called activation of desuccinylase, and these enzymes, they detox the system from ammonia and other metabolic byproducts, right? And it impacts the metabolic flexibility of the mitochondria as well. As you can see, 3 of the 7 sirtuins all work in the mitochondria, and SIRT2 also has some benefit to the mitochondria. So there's a lot of systems to protect the mitochondria in the system. This is one of the reasons why a lot of the longevity researchers feel that mitochondrial dysfunction is one of the biggest drivers of aging. SIRT6 works in the nucleus as well to repair DNA. We talked about previously how broken and dysfunction to the DNA causes transcription and translational issues. So SIRT6 repairs this DNA. It stabilizes those long telomeres, the non-coding ends. It also protects the genome, and it's a metabolic regulator as well. SIRT7 also works in the nucleus. It protects the ribosomes, which translate the RNA into proteins. It also protects this ribosomal DNA, which the ribosome itself has its own genome, and it also acts as stress resilience, right? So you could start to see, like, here are the hallmarks of aging that have been discovered, right? All of these cellular mechanisms that fall apart as we age, and as they fall apart, it drives aging significantly, right? Then on top of that, they found, well, wow, we have protective mechanisms against all of these dysfunctions, and they're within our own cells, and they're in the form of these sirtuins. So the idea is that if you can activate these sirtuins enough, we can slow down that aging process as a slowing down of the cellular level dysfunction, right? This has been the big promise of things like resveratrol, NMN, NAD. Most people have heard of these compounds. Now, they have some benefit, but for the most part, like, for example, resveratrol activates SIRT1. That's it. What about the other 6 sirtuins, right? They're not being activated. So there's a lot of research, a lot of active research in how do we activate the sirtuins and maintain their activation levels so that we can reduce all of that cellular dysfunction that happens over time that leads to aging, right? Now, the other system I mentioned is NRF2. NRF2 is the global cellular protector. It's the master antioxidant regulator. It controls over 200 genes, which include genes like NQO1, HO1, GST, all of these things, right? So these genes are really important in order to be expressed, in order to protect the cell, to make all of the antioxidants that the cell needs, and also suppress inflammation, right? So you can reduce inflammatory and oxidative damage to the cells. And inflammation, everyone's heard of inflammaging, right? Inflammation is very damaging to the cells. Oxidation is very damaging to the cells. Those are two toxic damaging components that occur in our body that damage our cells. NRF2 protects against those. It also helps preserve the mitochondria, and it is highly linked to longevity, right? So some of those people that were genetic anomalies, even in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that lived to 100, 105, 110, despite really poor lifestyle and so on, right? Despite smoking and drinking on a regular basis. How did they live that long? Well, it's coming to be understood that these individuals had gene mutations which created very high NRF2 function or very high Sirtuin expressions, right? So their ability to protect their system and repair the system was much higher than a typical individual who would experience a net damage as you get older and you continue to enjoy things like smoking and drinking and all that. The net damage occurs in the average individual, but for people with really high levels of NRF2 and Sirtuin activation, your body can protect you faster than it can damage, right? Like it's like a little Wolverine complex, right? One of the things, Wolverine's one of my favorite superheroes, and one of the cool things about him is that his body repairs immediately. Right? He gets stabbed, that wound gets healed within seconds. And that's what some of these individuals had. Of course, not to that level, but their systems can repair and protect them faster than damage can occur. Now, as you're aging, some of the biggest researchers and proponents of longevity medicine, like you look at Peter Attia, for example, right? They have all boiled down functionality, certain types of functionality, as a way of measuring age-related degeneration, right? And these are the main ones. These are the four main ones, and I'll talk about each of them individually. But why these are important is because if you have mitochondrial dysfunction, if you have DNA damage and dysfunction, if you have epigenetic drift, right? If you have high degrees of oxidative damage and inflammatory damage, all of these functionalities will be impacted in a significant way. And in fact, there's lots of studies correlating improvements in these functions with a dramatic improvement in longevity, right? And functionality of the individuals. In fact, grip strength, which is the first one we'll talk about, that was a meta-analysis that just came out, right? It was like 4 days ago that just came out that showed when they took cohorts of older people 45, 50 and above, and I think it was concentrated on 50, 55-year-olds and above, when they were below a certain level of grip strength. So on men, the grip strength level was 75 pounds of pressure. This was measured through a grip strength machine. I have like 2 or 3 around the house. I'm measuring grip strength all the time, but you can buy this on Amazon for 18, 19 bucks. It's basically, and I can't remember what it's actually called, but it's like a little device. It has a digital scale, and you squeeze it as hard as you can, and you try to see what that number is. If you were below, for men over the age of 50, 55, if you were below 75 or 80 pounds, you reduced you increase, your risk of all-cause mortality by like 35 or 40%. Right?
That's nuts. I just have to chime in with that's nuts.
It's so significant.
That is crazy. And it's a hand grip dynamometer?
Dynamometer. Yep. Exactly.
It sounds like a made up word because it is. Okay. All right.
Yeah. And for women, the threshold was something around like 45, 50 pounds. You want to measure your grip strength, and you want to make sure you're maintaining high levels of grip strength, because it's a very, very good measure of overall longevity and health, right? So that's one. 6-minute walk test is an easy test. In fact, if you wear an Oura ring, or, even I think maybe an Apple Watch, it does a 6-minute walk test, but you don't need a device. You can do it yourself. Just find a straight road without any big inclines or changes or lights and things like that you have to stop to, and then do a 6-minute walk. So time yourself with the stopwatch and see how much distance you can cover walking at your most brisk pace in that 6 minutes, right? And then you want to keep up with that. You want to see, do you cover X amount of, is it a quarter of a mile? Can you get to a quarter of a mile plus 10% and so on? It's a measure of VO2 max, cardiovascular endurance, and mitochondrial capacity, right? The 6-minute walk test is a fantastic test to understand where you are. Then there's another test called timed up and go, where you're actually sitting on the floor, right? And then how long does it take you to get off the floor up in a bipedal position, meaning standing upright, and then moving and start taking your first steps. Now, this is a very good assessment of neuromuscular condition and coordination, fall risk predictor, and also reaction speed, right? So how long does it take your neurological system to activate, to move the muscles in the right way with enough coordination to be able to get off the floor, stand up, be stable, and move? And then there's another one called the Berg Balance Scale, which looks at proprioception, vestibular function. So it's things like super simple things like standing on one foot. How long can you stand on one foot on either foot, right? There's other standing on one foot with your arms crossed and your eyes closed. There is from sitting in a seat, in a chair, can you stand up without using your arms, right? I see this all the time. What Shivan, it's funny, the way my nerd brain works, I fly a lot. Right. And a very annoying thing for me is when the person who's in the seat behind me wants to get up, they have to grab my seat, right? Yeah. And they're pulling on it like crazy to get up. And my seat is moving around violently. And I'm like, oh my God, this person has some serious...
How is it when they pull your hair by accident?
Right. The hair... Yeah. I don't have the same issue with the hair because my hair is this long. But the funny thing is my head goes to, wow, this person has some serious neuromuscular mitochondrial dysfunction because they cannot get up from their seat without yanking on something, right? You should be able to get up from your seat even without using your hands, or maybe at worst using the armrests and just pushing up, pressing up with your arms itself, right? So the Berg Balance Scale looks at a lot of this. So these are the ways in which you measure these things. So now we started looking at ashwagandha. I'll give you the quick story so we don't run out of time. But we took apart the plant and we looked at all of the active ingredients that have been described and known within ashwagandha, and we started searching in the root of the plant for other actives that may be there. Because keep in mind that the discovery of certain actives which make the ashwagandha complex were based on analytical chemistry methods from 25, 30 years ago, right? Analytical chemistry, like any other science, has become much more sensitive and much more accurate and robust now. We have much better instrumentation and so on. And as a result of that, we've been able to pour in much higher technology to look for other actives. So we found these 4 other actives in the ashwagandha root that have never been described, right? And so we call this complex the ASHX4 complex. It's not found in any other ashwagandha product on the market. And the reason is because it has different properties. And when you do an extraction, you actually have to change the methodology of the extraction to get the ASH4X out. So our goal was to work on these 4 compounds, but also then develop the process to extract the known 7 compounds, right? So this is what it looks like. The actual ingredient is called LongeFera, which is what you'll see on bottles and things like that. It's the ashwagandha. It's the Indian winter cherry. And most people know Indian ginseng. It's the root only. Of course, it's grown readily in India, Africa, other parts as well. But here's what it is. So the 7 things that you see here,
Oh my
The
gosh,
seven.
it's so sciencey. My eyes are crossing. Okay, keep going.
So this is called a HPLC, right? This is a liquid chromatography. Each peak represents a active compound. So what you see in the green are the 7 known active compounds in ashwagandha. So you take any ashwagandha in the market, as long as they're using roots and they're a real product, you'll see these 7 actives that are found in the green. The 4 blue that you see are the 4 new ones that we've discovered that are part of the ASHX4 complex, right? And so then one of the first things you do is, of course, work out the molecular structure of these. So we did. You see the ASHX4 complex up there on the top row, the 4 in the blue. So we figured out exactly what the molecular structures are. And then we started doing some studies on it. And what we come to find out is they go well beyond the adaptogenic mood-like qualities that ashwagandha is known for. They started activating things that ashwagandha has never been shown to activate, right? So one of the first studies we did, and I don't have the details of that study here to spare the number of slides, was something called a C. elegans study. It is a modeling study, a worm model actually, for longevity, right? So this worm has very similar cellular mechanisms that human cells do, but it has a very short lifespan. It has a lifespan of about 28, 29 days. But you can incubate it with certain target compounds and see if it extends the life of the worm. So that was one of the first things we did. We took these 4 actives, we put it, and we incubated worms with it, and then had worms that didn't have it. And we saw that the worms that had these 4 compounds in it, their life extension went dramatically higher. Right. And then you can also look at protein expression and all that. We saw everything improving in terms of cellular function in these worms. So then that's what you need to go, aha, let's start studying this in humans. So then we did a bunch of safety studies and all that. But we structured this clinical trial. Don't worry about this busy slide. This just tells you all the things we looked at in the clinical trial. It was a very robust trial. It was a 6-month-long trial, right? These are all the actives and all the things we looked at. So we looked at all of those sirtuins. We looked at NRF. We did all of the functional tests like grip strength, get up time and go, 6-minute walk test, Berg balance scale. We did all of that stuff. And then, of course, we did quality of life, because quality of life matters significantly as well. You see the blue bars versus the green bars, right? So the green bars are the placebo group. No change in quality of life up to 180 days in the test. In the blue, we saw a very significant, almost 50% improvement in quality of life in that 180 days. Now, how is quality of life measured? There's a number of standardized scales that measure mood, that measure movement, that measure overall kind of, alignment and feeling and all that. So these individuals were just happier, felt better in general over that 6-month period. And in the placebo group, because this was a double-blind placebo-controlled study, they saw no changes at all. So that was fantastic to see. We also saw, don't worry about all of this messiness, but if you look at the bottom, something called insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1. Now, IGF-1 is so critically important because IGF-1 is a growth factor. It is responsible for maintaining muscle mass and increasing muscle mass. It also plays an important role in improving and increasing neurological mass. So it's one of those key stimulus that makes us keep building, repairing, and growing key tissues like muscles and your central nervous system. IGF-1 dramatically drops as you age. What we're seeing here is almost a 45, 50% increase in IGF-1 compared to the placebo group. You see here, IGF-1 is at the change here between 5.4 and 1.7. So we're seeing an importance of IGF-1. Then we looked at all of those sirtuin markers, right? So again, ignore the crazy gel electrophoresis on the left-hand side. It's how we measure gene expression, but all of the sirtuins, we measured those as well. We also looked at all of the inflammatory markers related to cardiovascular issues, blood sugar control, neurodegeneration, and all that. And then we also looked at NRF2, remember the master antioxidant system, right? We looked at all of that as well. So we wanted to see what were the effects of all of this, right? So all of the hallmarks that change positively with taking the Regenerive ingredient that's found in LongeFera, we saw a significant modulation and activation of all the sirtuins, Sirt1 through 7. That has never been shown, right? There is no compound on Earth today that has any published studies showing an activation of all the sirtuins. As I mentioned, resveratrol is very well studied in aging. It only activates Sirt1. Same thing with NMN, right? NMN, which is sold really widely as an anti-aging miracle thing, it only ends up activating Sirt1 or increasing NAD production, right? So the fact that this compound is the only thing ever shown, synthetic or natural, to activate all the sirtuins is really, really quite amazing. We also saw a downregulation of all of the global inflammatory mechanisms. We saw a very significant increase in NRF2. Remember the master antioxidant system that is so important. We saw an improvement in telomere lengthening, which, 30 years or 25 years ago when telomeres were discovered, it was said that telomere lengthening is the fountain of youth. If you could lengthen your telomeres, that's the key thing that keeps people younger. We saw an improvement in preventing the erosion of the telomeres, and we saw a significant improvement in genomic stability as well, right? Now, that's what you see here from all of this. And then when you look at all of a couple of other markers that are important to point out here. Number one, there's something called NT-proBNP and atherogenic index, right? So what that is that's a really good marker of the risk of the inner lining of your vessels becoming atherogenically damaged, right? Which is what happens in early stages of vessel damage. That risk reduced quite dramatically. All of the sirtuins activated, all of the NRF2 activated, and then IL, all the inflammatory mediators and all that activated as well. Then we looked at grip strength, right? Because so those are biomarkers. We go, okay, we see that the biomarkers are improving, but does that mean we're seeing a functional improvement in that individual as well? You look here at the blue bars on the left-hand side, that's grip strength. In these individuals, we saw a 25% improvement in grip strength in that 6-month period. And keep in mind, these are not people who are working out, right? They're not actively trying to work on their grip strength. They're just taking the supplementation. A 25% improvement is massive. If your grip strength as a male in your 50s goes from 100 pounds to 125 pounds, that is a 2-step increase in how resilient and healthy you are, right? So because if you look at the cutoff thresholds, it's like 89 to 101 pounds. And then the next step for health and longevity and resilience is 101 pounds to like 118. And then when you go 118 to 130, that's another new step. We're increasing that twofold, right? 2 steps up. And same thing in women as well. When you look at the 6-minute walk test, right, we increase the distance that they could walk in a 6-minute period by 40%, right? We're increasing that distance. That means the cardiovascular system, the mitochondria. Okay. So then the 2 other things that we talked about, the Berg balance scale, right? A 73% improvement in the Berg balance scale. You see that on the left-hand side, right? That is all of the proprioception, vestibular stability, the ability to stand there on one foot, get up from a chair, move from one chair to the other, all of those things. 73% improvement. Just think about the functionality of that on day-to-day life. And then the last one on here, the time up and go, of 46%, almost 47% improvement in how quick these individuals could take to get up and start moving off the floor. Now, here's the beauty of all of this, right? I would encourage everybody that orders this to order one of those dynamometers on Amazon. I have 2 or 3 at home. They're about $19. You just squeeze it and measure it. Order one of those. pick a route where you could do a 6-minute walk test, do a time yourself of how long it takes yourself to get off the ground and stand up. And then also look at your Berg balance. The easiest component of the Berg balance is just standing on one foot, right? So measure how long you can stand on your left foot, measure how long you can stand on your right foot, and log all of those. And then do this every 3 months when you're on the supplement, right? You will see those improvements. You don't have to do all the gene expression and all that. Just do those things, right? So this is the data overall from all of those. We saw things like WOMAC score, which is pain and quality of life, all improving. We saw testosterone improving almost 18%. Creatine kinase going down, which is a marker of muscle degradation, that went down quite significantly. So we know we are preserving muscle, we're improving neurological function, we're improving mitochondrial function, we are activating all the sirtuins, the first thing ever to show that we're activating NRF2. On top of that, because we also have the other 7 compounds that every other ashwagandha has, we also have a huge impact on anxiety and stress. Look at this. We have a 61% reduction in perceived stress in these individuals, right? That's as good as any other ashwagandha on the market, if not better than some of them. So we still have all the known adaptogenic benefits of ashwagandha, except we have all of those added anti-aging benefits as well. We also saw a significant reduction in cortisol, which is great, right? Because you want to make sure you don't have an overall increase in cortisol over time. So here's the summation of everything that was improved quite dramatically. The other really important part, safety. There was no issues at all within safety, very well tolerated, no impact on the liver, kidney, thyroid function, all of that. It is a multi-targeted approach to promote healthy aging and functional longevity. It's the only compound on the market that has shown to be able to do all of these things. And then an additional study came out on it, which was a really breakthrough study. This was really exciting because what we saw was the ability of the ASHX4 complex with the from the LongeFera that was published in Frontiers of Molecular Neuroscience. This was a breakthrough showing a significant increase in protecting neurodegeneration. Right? So neuronal cells have some protective mechanisms in there. And if you can upregulate those mechanisms, you can protect brain cells and neurological cells from degradation over time. And that's what this showed. This was a whole genome sequencing that showed modulation of neurodegenerative genes by this component LongeFera. So the down regulation of genes associated with neurodegeneration. So we can likely protect the brain as well as we're protecting everything else. So this is a summation slide that shows all the things that are being improved. If you look at all the hallmarks of aging, all the important cellular mechanisms, all of that stuff that all of the top aging researchers talk about, even the Peter Attias of the world and the David Sinclairs of the world, all of that is actually captured right here, right? And this is the only thing that has ever been shown to be able to do all that. We're super excited about this. This is why, as Shivan said, I don't find the need or an ability to retire and just relax and things like that, because there's this kind of stuff that we can bring to the market. That's so exciting. And in part, I'm doing it selfishly for myself too, because I put my body through a lot of stress trying to work on all these things. And I need all of this stuff to help me function optimally.
I mean, that is, all right. Let's just put some love into the chat for Kiran. Thank you, sir. I so appreciate it. That was amazing. It's, especially for those of us who have been really playing the supplement game, the long game, which I know obviously you have, and so many of you I know are on a variety of things, and you're trying to figure stuff out. To hear something new that's backed by research is super cool. I mean, how many of us have picked up something and thought, you know what? I really hope this is going to work. No idea. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Nothing to lose, so to speak. But then when you do something and you feel a difference, you're like, yes. I mean, that's so exciting. So Kiran, great job. Thank you for doing this. If you all want to get this at the discount, this is the first time he's ever presented it. Please check it out. The link is there. It's Shivan15 for 15% off. And if you go to the site, when you go to the site, you will see that there is 20% off when you do the subscription. No, you cannot take Shivan 15 and put it on top of the 20%. No. So I just wanted to make it a nice treat if you wanted to buy one bottle and try it. 15% off with Shivan 15. If you want to get on the subscription, go for it. I love that because I never have to think about it. It's also a bigger discount. Okay, Mark saying, exciting for me. I'm 71 and moving great, but I always want improvement. Thank you. Zoom user says, fantastic information. Marie loves listening to you. And the gut course is awesome. Excellent.
Awesome.
Shanta says, thanks for the info. Okay, what is the source of the research conducted? And then I have 20 questions for you that we're going to do in less than 1 minute each.
Yes, we got it. Okay, so we do all the research with independent CROs. So these are clinical research organizations that often work with hospitals and so on. So you hire them to do it as third-party studies, because if you don't do it that way, it becomes really hard to publish any of these studies. All of that, all the the sourcing and the funding and the who collects the data, all that stuff comes out when you go through peer review. So you want to make sure that as a company that's developing stuff, you want to be as hands-off as possible on any of the research. So it's all done by third-party organizations.
Okay, great. This is his jam. Y'all don't put the questions in the chat. Got to put them in the Q&A box. I can't manage both. But this is his jam. He has been like, looking at research, generating research, and has had every single skeptic on the planet chase after him. So he's not playing. He's like, I know what y'all are worried about. I'm worried about that too with other people. I'm not worried about that with me, Kiran Krishnan. So, I'm not worried about it either with Kiran. Okay, here it comes. I am going to cover this one. Are there any contraindications? Other supplements and or pharmaceutical that should not be combined? And of course, speak to your physicians, your practitioners. This is not medical advice. He's not your practitioner.
Nothing known, unless you're allergic for some reason to the herb. But there's nothing known to be a contraindication. The type of medications I always have you make sure you talk to your physician about is if you're on anticoagulants, if you are on any sort of chemotherapies, things like that, you definitely want to check, but certainly check with your physician anyway. But yeah, there's nothing that we know of as a contraindication.
Okay. Okay. What if you're sensitive to nightshades and need to avoid? How does it affect you? Is it a nightshade? Is it a nightshade?
It's not. It's okay. Not, and it's like a root extract. So there's no issue with that at all.
Okay. Should I take this? Can I take this with the Cardigenics, which is the other formulation? Yep, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Record. Can you take this ashwagandha forever? Okay. Or need to take breaks? Okay. Cool.
So you don't need to take breaks. You can certainly take it forever. We've done all these pharmacokinetic studies that show about a 12 to 14 hour half-life in your body. So every daily dose that you take, it's utilized quite a bit by your cells and all that. And then 24 hours later, the levels start to diminish quite low. So it doesn't accumulate in your body and cause any sort of issue, which is what causes an issue with things that you shouldn't be taking forever, because it doesn't get broken down, it gets stored in the system, right? So we have all the pharmacokinetic studies to show that it does peak and then it does get metabolized completely from your body. So no issue taking it forever. Do you need to take it forever? It really will depend on your how you're functioning. And that's the beauty of this, right? Because this is one of the products that you can truly measure the effect of it yourself by measuring your grip strength, doing your walk test, looking at standing on one foot. How long can you stand on one foot? Like, I would really encourage people to do that, right? And if you're hitting, prove it to yourself. And you can, if you Google based on your age and your sex, what like the highest like 99th percentile would be for all of those tests. There's all that data is out there, right? Like what the grip strength should be for a 60-year-old male. What is the highest levels, the 99th percentile? What should the 60-minute walk test be? Try to get yourself to the optimal, right? And when you're there, maybe you can come off it for a few months and keep measuring. If you start to decline again, maybe get back on it. So you can play around with it yourself.
Okay. Yvonne, everybody, please put your questions in the Q&A box. Um, so do you, Artie was just kind of asking a question which you already answered. Do you agree with practitioners who advise not to take adaptogens on a continuous basis? So pulse it is what you're saying and follow your intuition and listen to your body.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're working with a practitioner and for whatever reason they don't want you to take it on a regular basis, absolutely listen to
Don't.
them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you
they
ship,
have reasons for that.
right. Do you ship outside the US?
Currently we don't, I
It's
don't
so
think.
new. It's so
Yeah,
new.
it's so
Um,
new.
Tell your friends to ship it to you who lives in the States. Um, okay. What are your plans for shipping to Canada in the near future?
So it's funny enough, it's made in Canada, but we
I saw
still
that.
have to go through the whole Health Canada NPN number thing,
Oh,
which
yeah, yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
taking like a year or more right now because Health Canada is so behind. So we're gonna start that process, but it could be a while. So again, if you know anyone in the US, have them have them get it for you. Or if you're coming to the US at some point and you order then and you put that address in, we'll ship it there, we usually within a day or two.
Okay. That's fast. Okay. How can, hold on. There was one thing I wanted to get here. Yvonne, do I think it may help SIBO? I just want to answer that quickly. So it helps your mitochondria. Could helping your mitochondria help everything? Yes. Is it a SIBO treatment? No. Do I know someone who tried everything with SIBO, couldn't figure it out, and then did a massive mitochondria support? And did it help her with her SIBO? It did. So I got a one-off for you right there. Very, she was doing red light therapy. She was doing like a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So I want, it will not hurt. Is it okay, hi Noreen, to take if you have autoimmunity?
Yes, there's no reason not to. In fact, it might actually be beneficial because with autoimmunity, you've got all of these inflammatory cytokines that are elevated all the time, right? And so bringing down IL-6, TNF alpha, and all like this product can be actually a benefit to like kind of calming
Oh,
some
that's
of that
cool.
response down.
So are you aware of any interactions with antidepressants or antipsychotics?
I'm not. No.
He's not.
Mm-mm.
That doesn't mean they don't exist. And also, like
Yeah.
someone has Googled, is it a nightshade? And it said yes, it was a nightshade. So, it's an extract of a
Yeah.
root versus like eating a tomato. So they're different, but also if it's a nightshade and you're concerned about it, don't do it. Don't do it.
Right.
Don't
Now
do it.
you see those peaks, right? We showed you that very blurring, painful HPLC.
Yes.
Each one of those peaks is a single molecule that we can isolate. So we isolate just these single molecules. So it's a very specific component of the root. So yeah, it's not like eating a nightshade in that regard.
Okay. How can we reliably test our mitochondrial function? Hi, Jaden.
So the functional test is the best way, right? Because the only other way to do it is to actually extract your cells out, or you can look for gene expression of certain aspects, or they can take cells out and then test the cells independently in a machine, which almost nobody ever does. So one of the best ways to do it is through things like the grip strength, right? This is why the pediatriers of the world and all that talk about dead hangs, why they're that what that indicates, right? Because it's not like there's something magical about how strong your hands are that makes you healthier or live longer. It's a proxy to understanding skeletal muscle function, neurological function, and mitochondrial function, right? It's a great proxy for that. And now there's a lot of data that correlates grip strength to longevity, resilience, and so on. So you're actually testing your mitochondrial function by doing the grip strength or doing the 6-minute walk test.
Okay. Which leads me to this because Jaden has this question, which I think is cool. How it's exactly what you're saying. How does practicing grip strength and other tests make our mitochondria work better overall? Doesn't it just help the muscles of the hand?
No, so and that's the thing. So we with this study, we did not work to increase grip strength, right? We were testing people's grip strength as a marker of improving mitochondrial neuromuscular function.
It's that whole
Um,
proxy thing. It's a it's
exactly.
a
It's a proxy. So
proxy.
yes. Now you can work on grip strength. You can do kettlebells and hold them and walk. You can dead hang. You can work on a machine to improve grip strength. That is going to increase your mitochondrial function, your skeletal muscle strength, your neuromuscular connections, which then have a big benefit for you. But we weren't trying to train their grip strength. We were measuring it as a proxy for mitochondrial function.
That is fascinating. Excuse me. Okay, we have to go a little faster if we want to get to this, because now I got 17 questions, so I don't know how this is going to go. How does mold toxicity affect the aging process, and what can be done to address damage from this?
Yeah, so mold toxicity is a driver of inflammation, reactive oxygen species, and damage to things like mitochondrial, DNA, protein folding, and all that, right? So it's an exotoxin that can drive that. No different than like a Marcons or a strep infection or toxicity from microplastics and all that. Ultimately, what these toxinogens do is they upregulate oxidative damage, inflammatory damage, and drive cellular senescence and other DNA type of damage. So that's why those hallmarks are so important, because negative stimulus will affect each of those hallmarks in one way or the other. So that's how it causes the problem. What do you do about it? Well, the first thing is you have to remove yourself or remove the source of the mold. If that's already done, then you want to, this word is not the greatest word, detoxify from the mold, because it's not, you can't actually detoxify from it. What you really need to do is support your liver, drink a lot of fluid, support your immune system. You can use things like immunoglobulin. So IgG does help bind mold toxin in the system, especially in the gut and the mucosa, and take it out. And then you want to improve your lifestyle, right? So you want to exercise, you want to sweat, you want to eat right, you want your immune system functioning, because your body has a way of removing all of these things. But those systems have to be working well. But I would also really pay attention to your liver health as well, because that's going to be a key
the liver
component.
Detox pathways. So we have an incredible masterclass on mold. It's a two-parter by Dr. Jill Krista, and that's at SIBOSOS.com under, I think, classes or courses. That class will change your life, and you will have to take breaks watching it. It's very intense. And like, she literally puts up pictures of bees and flowers and trees to reset your central nervous system in the middle of it. So you're not going to get mold remediated during this free webinar right this second. It is an intense thing, but you need to make sure you have the right mold inspector. And I just had a mold dog come to my house on Saturday.
Oh, interesting.
So they're, scent detectors, and it was fascinating. So, and I also had a human, with detectors. I would definitely go mold dog next time, and in the future. Okay. How long have people been taking the 4 compounds that our speaker found that no one else knew about? How do we know it's safe over time?
Yeah. So what's interesting about it? Well, so number one, we've done and published like 3 safety studies, right? So there's ways, parameters in which you test something for safety. It's very well known. So these are called 90-day and 120-day feeding studies. And then there's animal safety models where you can feed animals roughly 1,000 times the human dose to see if it has any toxicity. We've been able to do those studies. There are studies called chromosomal aberration tests, cytotoxic studies. So there's lots of parameters in which you can test safety. That's well known, well documented. We've done all those, and the studies are mostly published, which is great. That means that they're quite valid. Now, the other interesting part about it is, in fact, in the really traditional Ayurvedic decoctions of the roots that they make these really interesting decoctions. This is completely different than the ashwagandha products you'll find on the market. The true Ayurvedic ways, we suspect, and we have good information, that some of these compounds are actually in there in that type of extraction, right? Yeah. Which means that the traditional use of ashwagandha, the way the real old school Ayurvedic doctors would use them, likely incorporated these compounds as well. So there's probably a good history of use, but only in that way. It's not through the normal ashwagandha supplements.
That makes sense. Is it gluten-free?
Yes, there's no wheat or anything involved in any of this. So we control everything from the farm all the way to the finished product.
And somebody wants to know if it is organic.
Yeah, so we don't have it as certified organic, meaning we
Yeah.
don't have USDA there inspecting it, but we control everything about the soil, how it's grown, who's growing it. We measure the soil and all that, so it's absolutely clean and biodynamic, which to me is more important than organic, right? Because biodynamic means that you are preserving the soil, preserving the cleanliness of the soil and all that. Organic just means you can't use certain pesticides, but there's lots of pesticides you can use that are organic pesticides. So
There you go.
yes, it's very clean from an agricultural perspective.
Okay, Marilyn, you want to know where to order it? Okay, here I'm going to put the link again in the chat. Okay, Chazelle, hey, are there gut side effects like diarrhea in those of us with SIBO plus Hashimoto's syndrome?
No, we did not see any adverse effects at all in the clinical trials.
Okay,
I've been taking it myself for about 6 months, measuring my grip strength, and all things are moving in the right direction.
cool.
I have not had any issues, and we have this product has been out with our counterparts in India for probably almost a year. So they've
Okay,
got lots of people in India taking it without any issues. So I don't
okay.
expect you would see any issues.
And everyone's microbiome is different. So, you know.
Yeah.
Can this be used by someone with Parkinson's with all the meds they take? Any negative effects on their meds? Got to talk to the doctor about that.
Yeah, it'd be so hard to say with cocktails or things that people are taking. So I would do a
Sorry.
little bit of research and talk to your doctor for sure.
Jocelyn, can Karen comment on the difference in sulforaphane
Hmm.
uh, supplements to raise NRF2 versus
Hmm.
Regenerative?
Yeah. So sulforaphane is fantastic. Typically comes from broccoli and things like that. Sulforaphane does increase NRF as well. It also upregulates, I think it's phase two detox pathways in the liver. So it has kind of a different focus. Sulforaphane, for example, is used a lot in people with estrogen dominance, because you could it help regulate some of the detox mechanisms. You could use that, for example, on mold toxicity, so you can support the detox pathways. But sulforaphane has never been shown to activate anything around sirtuins or have any sort of functional improvements like grip strength and all that as well. But can you take this with sulforaphane? Absolutely. You may just have double the impact on NRF, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Okay, and then what about with glutathione? Or would it be duplicative? Duplicative?
Um, no, so glutathione, no, because this improves something called SOD, superoxide dismutase, which is your endogenous enzyme that neutralizes free radicals, oxygen free radicals. Glutathione also is an antioxidant, but it does it through a different mechanism. So it could be additive. It's not redundant.
Okay. Okay, we did that. We did that. Dwayne, what is the benefit or impact to one with, as one EMT put it, the most inflamed liver I've ever seen? Oh, Dwayne, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. What's the impact? I mean, number one, it's not going to hurt the liver anymore if
Yeah.
your liver is inflamed. As we saw in the clinical trials, the inflammatory cytokines go down, which is good. So that may be a benefit for your liver in itself. We don't have any studies on improving liver functions, but we do have safety studies showing it does not create any issue or damage with the liver, right?
Okay.
So if you're concerned about your liver and what all it has to metabolize, this so far has been shown to be perfectly safe for your liver.
So is this okay? Is this safe for fatty liver? By the way, there's a new fatty liver test called a fibroscan. Usually they
Yep.
just do an ultrasound. The fibroscan, I just had it done. I used to have fatty liver. I don't anymore. So this is huge for me. I cried. I
Mm-hmm.
was so excited. I haven't had alcohol since 1986, but it was super fast and easy. It took like less than 30 seconds. It's called a fibroscan. Talk to your GI doctors. Um, okay, how does it compare to taking straight ashwagandha powder?
Yeah. So the big difference is that, well, number one, any ashwagandha powder you take, you absolutely want to be confident that there's no stem or leaf parts in it. Right.
Okay,
It has to be root only because the
this is
stems and the
important.
leaves
Yeah.
can have toxigenic compounds, and hence it's actually not allowed, but companies do it. They add stems and leaves because it increases the amount of
Oh,
withanolides and withanoside actives. Right. So you want to be careful. You want to feel confident about whatever brand you're taking. Number two, it will not have any of that ASHX4 complex. So you will not get any of the longevity things that we just talked about.
Okay.
You'll get the adaptogenic benefits, the mood improvements, but you won't get the grip strength. You won't get the sirtuin activation. You won't get any of that.
Unless you know who's making that bulk and you know for a fact that they're not adding the leaves and stems,
Yeah.
I would run away.
Yeah, you have to be very careful. We
Yeah,
found way too many companies are adding in the leaves and stems
of
and leaves.
course. It's
Yeah,
bulk. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Can we open the capsule?
You can, yes. It'll likely have a bitter taste to it. I haven't tasted the powder itself, but knowing what it is and all, it'll probably have a bitter taste to it. So if you don't mind that and you want to mix it into some sort of food, you probably could do that.
My husband is 92, fit, but now has short-term memory issues. Is this going to help? Magda, there's no way to tell because of what is
Yeah.
generating that underlying cause. But I'm so sorry, by the way. And 92, wow. Many blessings to you all. Try it. And by the way, this is the size of a capsule. So it's a tinier capsule. To me, this is the size like of a large capsule. And so this is the
Right.
size of this capsule. I just wanted to show you the comparison. I don't know if I'm doing a good job. It is smaller. So just FYI in terms of, what the experience is like. What if one is hyperthyroid? I was told ashwagandha should not be taken in this case because you're only using certain constituents. Is that a concern?
If they're hyperthyroid,
Hyper. Yep.
not hypo, I don't see why it would be an issue. I Yeah, I mean, I can't, in my head, I can't make the connection as to why you'd be told not to use ashwagandha in this case. So,
Okay.
yeah, I would maybe just research that a little bit more, but I
Yeah.
can't see what the connection would
Okay.
be.
Best to take with food, morning or evening. Hi, Victoria.
It doesn't really matter. During the clinical trials, we don't specify that. But most herbs and all that are better taken with food because it increases the absorption of the herbs. So I would take it sometime during the midday, whenever you think you can remember, because consistency of use is going to be important, right?
Why, if one is hypothyroid, like they're asking, is there a difference? You're like very specific hyper versus hypo. This is where we're in the medical realm, guys. Like this is you've heard him say he doesn't have any awareness of conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
So follow your intuition, talk to your practitioner if this is of concern. How about with pectisol? You wouldn't. So pectisol is an incredible binder. You're doing a C-reactive protein blocker like pectisol. You don't want to take it at the same time as you're doing
You don't
a
know
binder
because
like that.
it could totally interfere with its absorption.
So it's a great question. Also, y'all have such great questions. Hi, Shanta. Has it affect on Alzheimer's tau protein misfolding been studied?
Um, well, so we know that we can certainly reduce the risk of protein misfolding because of the activation of sirtuins, but of course we have not studied that in Alzheimer's, right? So we don't have any sort of data on Alzheimer's, so I can't make that claim or recommendation.
Okay.
The connection is yes, Alzheimer's has a protein misfolding component of the pathology. Sirtuins play a role in protecting against that. If you activate sirtuins, maybe it could help, but we have no idea because we have not studied that.
Okay, 3 minutes to count down. Guys, you know what to do. If you want it, now's the time to grab it. You heard me say the other things when the recording is off. Okay. Is there a way to test sirtuin and NRFZ activation levels?
No, you saw the complicated tests we were doing, right? So
Ah,
you look at these. These are the kind of electrophoresis and all you have to do. We do this in something called a peripheral blood monocyte. So you have to take your blood, you have to spin out the monocytes, which are the white blood cells, and then you have to break them up and then look for all these proteins. It's complicated. There's no commercial test that does this. This is all research based, equipment. So no, you can't easily just test your sirtuins
okay.
and so on.
Okay, does this help with osteoporosis?
Reducing of that inflammation will play a role.
Yeah.
Osteoporosis is a pro-inflammatory issue. Improving mobility, improving movement, and mitochondrial function,
Get up and
and all
go.
that. It's gonna improve bone, because again, bone health is also dependent on impact, movement, and so on. So in that sense, it can improve activities that will support bone health. We don't have any data specifically on
Yeah.
osteoblasts, class, and all the mechanisms around bone, but certainly the functionality that helps with bone health
It's new.
can be
It's
improved.
new and old at the same time, right? So
Yeah,
they've made this discovery about this ancient herb. In India, they've been using it for a year, and it's been on the market there. It's new, so I'm sure more research is coming. But y'all, to have this kind of research for a supplement at any stage of the game is
yeah.
so uncommon. Are we thrilled to spoil you? Yes, we are. But just like a perspective check there. Okay. Um, Diane, please repeat answer about not taking it when using a toxin binder. All we were saying is don't take them together on the same,
Right.
slurp or, By the way, I saw this YouTube video about how to make taking supplements easier because sometimes I'm like, okay, I can't. Can I just have a cream? Like sometimes I
Yeah,
just get pill
exactly.
fatigue. So you put the water in your mouth, you lean forward, you put the supplement in your mouth. So you're gonna have to, and then you just sit up. It was really like go Google it on YouTube because I'm not even sure I just said that right, but that's what I did. Yeah, and it really I was like, this isn't gonna work. It worked. It worked. Yeah, Noreen, will it help with sleep and nighttime walking due to increase in cortisol level if we take it at night, and what dose? So he's suggesting midday. It's
Yeah.
just like there's no downside to that. Rhonda, we already talked about the ashwagandha powder, and that if one takes this, should one not also take the powder? What's in your powder? You want to make sure the stems and leaves are not in your powder. You know, are
And
you
and and if you're taking ashwagandha, like if you're taking ashwagandha powder for all its adaptogenic mood balancing qualities, remember that this has all of that actives as well to give you that effect, and we've verified it from the clinical trials. And so with this, you get all of those effects plus all the anti-aging benefits.
right?
So it's a double whammy.
Yep. Okay, we have to go. I love you all so much. Thank you all so much for coming. And Kiran, keep up the great work. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for this.
Of
Thanks to Morgan,
course.
who was behind the scenes answering a couple of questions and helping to help Kiran take this to market. So thank you, of course. Just thanks for coming. I haven't been off for a couple of weeks because of the flu, etc. I had actually canceled a webinar, which I hardly ever do. So it means a lot to me that you all came today, and I'm so glad to be able to share this with you. Be sure to stick around because we have more from Kiran coming in the upcoming year, including in January. Fingers crossed, we're working on that, and lots more of great developments. So thanks, Kiran. Thanks, everybody.
My pleasure. Thank
Take
you, everyone.
care. We'll
Bye.